All right. Welcome again to another podcast of Mad in Love. I'm Dr. David Hawkins from the Marriage Recovery Center, and we're back with another exciting episode. This is a follow-up on a previous one of Dr. Hawkins Reacts. And if you were with us, it was very robust, very lively, and we're going to follow up again. And like last time, we have a special surprise in store for you. Joining me is my esteemed colleague, Jonathan Glover. Jonathan, it seems like we're in for another exciting. I'll let you introduce what did we do last time, and why was it so exciting and edgy, and what do you think's going to happen today? Welcome, Jonathan. Tell us about what we did and where we're going today.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here again. I must admit, I'm a victim to this latest trend. I definitely have played around a little bit on ChatGPT and asked it all sorts of questions just for fun. You go on ChatGPT, it's this website, and you can ask it any question. It's artificial intelligence, so you can ask it any questions. You can tell it to do certain things or ask it to do certain things for you. It can create a body of text for you. If you say, "Oh, I need to create an invitation for my anniversary," so type up a thing for me, and I want it to be humorous, and I want it to reach this target population, and it'll just spit something out. It takes no time to think about what the answer is. It just spits out an answer. It's really funny.
Katie, all right, you're gonna lead the way here, right? You've got some questions that were on the topic of narcissistic and emotional abuse, correct?
Is it possible for my kids to learn narcissistic behavior if my partner is a narcissist? Let's see what George has to say.
Come on, George. The answer is yes. Absolutely. Okay. Oh, not bad. Oh, my.
Okay.
Oh, and then it volunteered to mitigate this. It volunteered suggestions about how to mitigate these effects.
Well, George knew that he was on a short leash here.
So going back, it says basically that children can be influenced by the behavior and attitudes of their parents, including narcissistic traits. It's important to note every child is unique. Okay, so here are some considerations regarding the potential effects of having narcissistic parents. 1, modeling behavior. 2, emotional impact. 3, parentification. 4, lack of empathy. And 5, enmeshment or neglect. I've seen some of these words used by you, Dr. Hawkins.
I think it's profound. I think it's George did it. I'm liking all 5 points. I love number 1, modeling. They will experience it as normal, the manipulative, self-centered, or entitled behavior. They perceive these behaviors as normal or acceptable, and then they model them. You know, children learn what they see, what they experience, not necessarily what they are taught, but what they see, the emotional impact. I like that parentification. I like that lack of empathy can affect the child's ability to develop a healthy understanding of others' emotions and perspective, and enmeshment or neglect, those 2 extremes. I like it very much. Jonathan, what do you think?
Yeah, this the modeling behavior, and some of these others, the enmeshment and neglect and the parentification. I think it's worth mentioning that what we learn in childhood, what we learn from our parents, is not always a 1-for-1, and it's not. If you have an angry father, then you become an angry father. Sometimes it's, if you have an angry father, you learn how to be in a relationship with somebody who can explode with anger at a moment's notice. And so you learn how to interact with that. So sometimes it is a 1-for-1, and other times you learn how to be in a relationship with that type of person or that type of behavior. This parentification is something that I see a lot of, and I'm glad that Dr. Hawkins, that you mentioned this normalization of chaos or normalization of dysfunction or normalization of abuse. A lot of times what we see is I see it especially with those who are dismissive of attachment. They find they have this very shallow definition of what intimacy and connection is. They say, yes, my parents loved me, and then you ask for examples. Can you elaborate? Can you give examples of how they were supportive or how they were loving? And they can't give specific examples because it didn't actually happen. But the parents assert through their language, I love you, I care about you, I'm here. Anytime you need me, I'm here for you. But as far as feeling it and knowing that that did happen, that a lot of times is absent. And so then it's normalized, and that is what they carry into their adult intimate relationships.
Yeah. I want to highlight number 5. The topic of, you've touched on the topic of boundaries, Jonathan. So narcissistic parents, I like this, might swing between over-involvement and, at the other extreme, neglect. And emotional neglect is something I see in many, many abusive relationships. This emotional neglect, not giving to their mate what their mate deserves to have in an emotionally attached and loving and caring relationship. And then the topic of boundaries, being invasive, having a mate that just is in your brain. He's in your brain. He's in your head. He's telling you what you ought to think, what you ought to feel, what you ought to experience, what you ought to do. And then if you've been raised in a chaotic environment, you don't know to say, get out of my head. Get out of that. You don't get it. I'm occupying enough space in my head. I can't have you in it. And anyway, learning how to set boundaries on the invasive partner. And I think abusive relationships are often marked by over involvement in invasion, and the opposite, neglect. Those two, and learning how to have and experiencing a healthily attached relationship is a big challenge.
Well, and it requires attunement and empathy, which is that curiosity about somebody else's needs and where they are at. And it's very difficult for somebody who is narcissistic to recognize that somebody else has a different perspective and different needs and different emotions than how they would handle a situation. Let's also name this over involvement. Let's also just use the word controlling, because that's often what it is. It's not over involvement, which sounds like a fantastic thing, right? I'm conflict avoidant. That's not what we're talking. We're not talking about over involvement. We're talking about being controlling, and a lot of times that parent is controlling, not because they care so much about their child, but unfortunately they care about, when they are over involved, the perception of other people for them. Like, oh, I'm going to help out so much with my son's little league because I'm going to relive my little league experience, and I'm going to get the praise from all these other parents about what a great dad I am. But am I actually paying attention to the fact that my son might really be struggling and really not like little league? No, I need him to do little league because that's where I thrive.
Why don't we roll into, let's see what George has to say about mitigating. I'm curious. So we're generally approving of this list of the potential impact of a narcissistic parent. Read it away there, Katie, if you don't mind.
To mitigate the potential negative impact, consider the following. 1. Provide a supportive environment. Foster an environment where your children feel loved, valued, and emotionally supported. Encourage open communication, validate their feelings, and promote healthy self-esteem.
Like
2.
That.
Teach empathy and healthy boundaries. Help your children develop empathy by modeling empathetic behavior and encouraging them to consider others' feelings. Teach them about personal boundaries and the importance of respecting others' boundaries as well. 3. Seek professional support. Engage the services of a therapist or counselor experienced in working with children of narcissistic parents. They can provide guidance and support tailored to your children's specific needs. Then finally, 4, encourage individuality and self-expression. Promote your children's individual interests, talents, and strengths. Encourage them to pursue activities that foster their own identities and passions.
It's a lovely list. It's a tall order. And, if
super
you're
vague.
struggling, it is super vague. It is super vague. I call it a tall order. To do all of these things, you'd have to be a pretty balanced and healthy individual. You can't have a lot of chaos going on in your own head or in your own relationship. And if you're a narcissistic parent who lacks boundaries and thrives on chaos, yeah, no, I don't think you're going to be teaching empathy and healthy boundaries. You're not going to be getting anyway. Da 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 da.
This
So
this also
great list.
It's a good attempt at a
Cut and paste.
vague list. Yeah, cut and paste. It also, everything that they talk about relates to how you should parent your child and what you should do or say with them. It doesn't touch at all on the importance of the modeling of your own emotional regulation and your own dynamics with your spouse or other people. So having the humility in front of your children or your spouse to say, you know what, you're right. I should not have done that thing. I should not have said that thing. That was abusive, and I'm sorry for that. So it doesn't talk at all about the importance of modeling these things for yourself and within your relationships that they see. So a lot of times this is the problem that I find, is that parents can say all of the fantastic things. They say all of the things that they're supposed to say. They've read the parenting books and they say these things. But as far as the words, the fruit behind this, there's no fruit. There's no demonstration of these values.
This may be too much of a tangent, but Jonathan, you have a specialty in dialectical behavior therapy, and the 4 modules, and I would just segue it into this, that a requirement for healthy parenting and recovery from narcissism and emotional abuse requires the 4 modules of DBT, which I'd like you to touch on very briefly. Emotion regulation, distress tolerance, interpersonal effectiveness, and mindfulness. And distress tolerance, or I think a synonym for distress tolerance is frustration tolerance, learning how to deal with frustrations and the problems that come up in life, learning how to manage my emotions in the face of those situations so that I can really be available to my children, learning how to be mindful and aware, and interpersonally being able to talk about these different situations that are right. Can you just comment briefly? Do you agree that those 4 modules would be very, very, very powerfully important to mitigate the potential negative impact of narcissism on children?
Yes, what I find is that a lot of parents are asking, or in marriage, right? Or it's what should I be saying? What should I be doing? And they're not asking the question of, how do I regulate myself? How do I stay within my window of tolerance? How do I grow that window of tolerance so I can handle more emotionally? Because parenting isn't easy. It can be stressful at times, and being in a marriage is not always fun and games. It's not always pleasant. There's lots of difficult things involved with any relationship, and in order to be able to meet somebody else and be curious about that person and have empathy for them and meet their needs, you have to first check in with yourself and be really get real with yourself about where you're at emotionally, how much you can handle, and where what space you're acting out of. And if you're trying to, put the cart before the horse and determine how to interact with this other person, and you are all kinds of off balance yourself, you might want to take a step back and figure out what's going on within you first.
I want to even add in, though, that it sounds like we're talking a lot about DBT for the person who has these traits, the NPD traits. But I think, but is it your opinion that victims of emotional or narcissistic abuse could benefit from DBT in order to be healthier parents for their children?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've done, I don't know how many different DBT trainings. I mean, I've been a participant in those trainings, and every time I learn something new, not just for my professional work, but for my personal life. And because these skills are very individual. They're for me, and the mindfulness is just, it's what we're paying attention to, how we're receiving information, and how does that affect us. Emotional regulation, distress tolerance. I find that the more I read about DBT and the more I practice dialectical behavior therapy, the more I realize that it's for humans.
Which we are ones.
Yeah.
Not George.
Not George.
Sorry.
Not George, right.
Right. So, Dr. Hawkins, this is the second episode we've used ChatGPT. George, I'm going to close this screen, but what are your thoughts? What's your reaction to ChatGPT in general when it comes to questions regarding counseling?
B-. B-. It was worth toggling off of. It was worth, I don't think he hit the bullseye. There were a couple of like in this last one, out of the 7, I thought 2 were thoughtful and showed some wisdom, and 5 were kind of off the mark, and previous ones really off the mark. And on a couple of them he got a solid A+. So I'm going to give an overall B-. Jonathan, what do you think? The grade.
I think that's being generous.
Okay.
I would not recommend George Paul Thomas as a therapist for anyone.
Right. I'm gonna lower it to C. Yeah. Okay. I'm influenced by you, Jonathan.
But
grade.
It has been a fantastic for generating some good discussion today.
Well, I hope this has been as interesting for you all as it has been for us. It again, what I love about this and this format, Dr. Hawkins Reacts, Jonathan Glover Reacts, it gets us to thinking about these issues and the complexity of them. It's complex. So I'm back to giving George I'm going to give George a C+, actually. He tried, but yeah, it missed the mark. And we're trying, and we sometimes miss the mark and we sometimes hit it. But all right, for today, thank you, Jonathan, for joining us. And to our listeners, I want to express our sincere gratitude for joining us on this journey. If anything we have discussed today resonates with you, please remember that we're here to support you. We offer a lot of different services. If you want to learn more about Jonathan Glover and the ways that you can work with him and DBT and other skills he has, visit our website at www.marriagerecoverycenter.com, we've got a new and improved website. Go see it, everyone. If you've enjoyed today's episode, we would greatly appreciate your support. Kindly leave us a 5-star rating and subscribe to our channel to stay updated on future episodes. We're going to have one on intervention, by the way, folks. All right. Your feedback and ongoing engagement mean the world to us. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, take care, and as always, be well.